Hey everybody, Will here from MachineLoveUs.com, here with another video in the series of building an information product. If you haven't watched prior videos, you may want to, although they're a little bit less relevant. This one is kind of distinct. In this video, what I'm going to be doing is showing you how to store data via AWS in AWS's storage, NoSQL storage system, which is Dynamodb. And what I'm going to do is pull submissions off of Reddit and then as articles, and then store those submissions in Dynamodb along with the comments. And I'm doing this because this data product will eventually use this information as the inputs to machine learning models that we'll build. I'm not going to save this data locally because I eventually foresee it becoming hopefully very large. And so I want some place sort of in the cloud to store this information. And I eventually want to automate it so that every day, even every couple hours, new data is pulled from different subreddits, and this just works by itself to create a large data lake. Okay, so there's some prerequisites for this video. You should be able to have an AWS. You should be able to get to the AWS console. You should be able to log in there. And if you just go to AWS Management Console, and then what I'm doing is I'm signing into the console, and this is essentially what you see. Okay, now you need to configure, you need to pip3 install some things. Again, this is, I'm calling this Casper. This is my Python 3 environment that I have set up with all of my different requirements and modules that I have. So I have pip3 installed AWS. I've already done that. And then what I need to also install is Boto 3. So I have that. And what I needed to do would be, I needed to use AWS configure to configure my app. Now it's giving me problems because I hadn't used pip3 install AWS. If you're using Python 3 but you pip install AWS, it might point at 2.7 on your system, and so that's something to watch out for. But what I have is you're going to need credentials. So when you are in the management console, you need to go to your account and get your security credentials via here. You need to make a key and then get the access key ID and the secret key. And then you can store them when you install, when you run AWS configure and it doesn't throw up on you. You can configure your AWS credentials. So what that allows you to do is from IPython, what you can start doing is running these sort of simple commands to make Boto 3 resource Dynamodb. Now this, a little trick that you might run into, when I originally started this asked for a region. I believe it's user region, and I'm in Virginia, so it's US East 1. You might be somewhere else. Let's see, maybe not user region. Actually, I think it's when you Boto3.resource, there's a region that you need to put in. You can put that in with your credentials. Depends on what region you're using. Now, let's go through this tutorial where I'm creating this table users. This table users doesn't exist. I haven't set it up. And so it's giving me this resource not found exception. Okay, so which brings us to Dynamodb itself. So what I could do is, so from the AWS console. I've also given my user administrator access, which you may need to do to get this to work. If I go to DynamoDB, when you first do this, you may have a different screen that introduces you to DynamoDB. But you can do is create a table, and then I'm going to call this table users, and then it's asking for a primary key here, so I'll just say last name as a primary key. Create a table, and so it's creating it now and populating it. Not populating it, there's no data in this table. It's essentially just has this key, which is last name. So the table is being created. Also, what you may want to do is disable auto scaling in these read and write capacity units. You will get charged for those. One thing about AWS is it has no problem charging you for stuff that is running but that you didn't use. And so you want to make sure that either you're using the things that you're sure you're using, or not running them. Okay, so now this should have a creation time, which it does. So I'm able via IPython to query this table that I just created, users. So now what you can do via IPython essentially is put in information. Okay, so table.put item, and then I haven't specified any of these other fields. I've only specified last name, but it should be able to go in no problem, which it does. So this is giving me back 200, which says that's okay. Now let me just demonstrate that if I misspelled this name or put it in, it would give me a validation exception. One or more parameter values were invalid, missing the key last name in the item. Okay, so this is great. What I have is the ability now to query, put things in AWS in a table, DynamoDB. That was a quick setup. It is pretty easy to use, pretty friendly. Once you have your AWS credentials and your requirements installed. So I have this repository, Casper, and I need data that I'm eventually going to use to build some models from. And so what I've created is a new folder in here called data. And what I've done is created a dynamo.py file, which I will use to connect to DynamoDB using a lot of the commands that we just used, that we just demonstrated. So all of this does is imports Boto3, which we did via IPython, and then queries this articles table, which is the main table that I'm going to use. So return AWS table articles. So in this, there's only one function in here. What it does is connects to Boto3 resource DynamoDB. We just did that in IPython. And then it returns the table articles, which I have set up. And if that table didn't exist, it would give me an error. Okay, so that will allow me to get DynamoDB. Now, what I need to do is get some information from Reddit. And then from Reddit, what we're going to be using is Reddit's what's called PRAW. Okay, and what's nice is PRAW is also very easy to use. Essentially, all you need to do once you've registered your document with Reddit and created an app, you need to go to Reddit and create app in the developer community. And then you'll get information from there. You can go, let's see, create another app and fill out this information, and you'll get your credentials for for your personal app that you can use to connect to PRAW, which is the Reddit API essentially. And so to connect to PRAW, all you need to do is provide some information, which are the key, which you'll get when you create the app, the secret, which is the secret key that you'll get, and a user agent, which is essentially a unique string that can be, I think, almost anything, but they recommend that it be just unique. Okay, so I have this information in my config file. So what I need to do is import it. So I need to see where I am. I'm in Casper, so I should be able to import config, which is where I've put these keys that I'm not going to show you. But then I can connect to Reddit and get a Reddit instance. And what's nice with this Reddit instance is you can get a subreddit, which is reddit.subreddit, I believe. And so I've connected to the subreddit writing, and so I can get, I could do things like for post and subreddit, which is the subreddit writing .hot, print post.title, and I can see the hot titles from that subreddit. So a very easy way to get into Reddit and query some of these books. Query some posts, query some submissions, and you can get things like the comments, upvotes, scores, things like that. All very standard stuff. So in this file, what I've done is import PRAW, import my config, which is what we just did in that IPython instance, and then I, just like that DynamoDB file, returning a Reddit instance, which is exactly what I did in the IPython notebook IPython that we just did. So what does this all come down to now? So we have a DynamoDB table and we have a Reddit instance. So what I'm going to do is go through that Reddit instance, pull out posts, I call them articles, and then put them into that database. And I do this in what I call my data core. Okay, so I import some things. I need more comments to iterate through the Reddit comment sections. I need that articles table. I need that Reddit instance that we just looked at. I instantiate both of those here. And then what I do is I go through and I get the hot submissions. Now, I did this for writing just as a default. So what this does is 1, 2, 3, 4, connects to subreddit, sub, then iterates through hot submissions and returns them in list. So what this does is instantiates this empty list of data, connects to the subreddit that is passed in, and then for all of the hot submissions in there, goes through and creates a dictionary that has the ID, title, score, URL of the submission, and then iterates over the comments and appends them to a list. And eventually what I get is an array of data that are these articles. And so let's just do that for now. I'm not going to put them into the database yet. Okay, but I've gone through writing already, so why don't I go through Python subreddit. Okay, so what I can do is Python 3 data. Now, what I've done before I do that, note that I'm just printing out the title in the article, but why don't I, but then I do have data from here. So before actually printing this, what I can do is do this via IPython, and then we can inspect the list that I'm returning in here. Okay, so if I use IPython again, and then this is core, so what I can do is just from data.core import, let me see, subreddit hot submissions. Okay, no module named Dynamo. Okay, what I think I need to do is just set my Python path. Hold on a sec. Okay, maybe what I need to do is actually set the paths. Data.dynamo, data.reddit. Okay, great. So subreddit hot submissions. So data equals subreddit hot submissions, and then I said Python. So let's see what I get back here. I should be able to get back in the Python hot submissions, as many as they'll allow me, the data for the submissions and then all of the comments. So this is back. Let's look at the length, which is 100 of them, which is great. And now let's inspect the first one, which is, let's just call it the post. Okay, so I can look at the keys here, which I got the title of this post, Python retrospective, 29 planning. I can look at some of the comments. Okay, so there are a lot of comments. There are a lot of information. There's a lot of good data here. There's a lot of data cleaning that I think I'm eventually going to need to do. Okay, so this is great. This is what it returns. And now the last part of this script in data.core is actually putting the data in the articles table. And we can do that via the put item method on the table that we used previously. And the ID for this articles table is the submission ID from Reddit. So before I run this, before I do Python 3 data.core, what I can do is look in DynamoDB in my articles table, look at items, and I believe I have 1 to 100 items here. So I only have these, right? And these are from 101 of 101, are from doing this previously on the subreddit writing. Okay, so now I'm having a problem with these paths again. So now what this will do in just a minute is start putting this information in this DynamoDB database. Now, another benefit of this is that I can set up cloud formation. I can use some of the other AWS services, maybe a Lambda, to schedule some tasks, maybe iterate over a bunch of subreddits periodically and grab that piece of data. So it looks like all of this worked out. And so if I refresh now, what I have is the first page, which is 1 to 100. And now I have 100 to 200. So I have a lot more information in here. So this has worked out well. I can get the data back. So let's just do that as what I can do here is I have now all of this data in my DynamoDB. And to get it back out, getting an item, it's just really simple. Okay, now I need to connect to the table first. So I need to connect to the table articles. Okay, so DynamoDB, okay, need to connect to DynamoDB first. But essentially, I have all this data in this table articles. And if I want to pull out one and show you that it is the data that I put in there, I can do things like this. Now I'm going to get an error because this isn't the key. The key that I have set up here, table.getItem key, is going to be ID. And let's get back this article that we have. The title of this is how and when to begin a new paragraph when it's only one person speaking. This is, let's see, this ID. Here's the string ID in my database. Okay, so I have this item, and this item has keys. It's a dictionary, which is great. So the title of this should be that question that we just saw in that database, which it is. Okay, so what we have done in this video is take data from Reddit, grab it via the Reddit PRAW, and then save it into AWS Dynamodb. This will allow us to scale. We'll connect Dynamodb to some other AWS services, and we will start populating our articles database with tons of submissions that will be the foundation for some of the models that we'll build. If you haven't already, guys, like and subscribe to this channel. Let me know your thoughts on this application that is being built here. You'll eventually see where all of this is going. It's very exciting that we're able to do a lot of different things in here, and so I'm glad you're following along. Thanks for listening.